second language pedagogy, learner and learning context. We may talk about what is the most effective second language pedagogy, or what is the most efficient way of teaching second language. However, the answers to these questions are definitely not universal. They would depend on the learners, the kind of learners you have, and the kind of learning context in which you are teaching them. So there will be several learner variables which will count. Remember all the research, all the discussions that we had. Mostly they were, for the main part actually, they have been in foreign context, in Western context, and things might be a little different in Pakistan. Especially if you're teaching in public schools or if you're teaching in private schools, how much exposure the learners already have who come to your classrooms, how much input do they have when they go outside the classrooms, how much opportunities do they have to use the language. They will all affect the pedagogy. They will affect the way whether your pedagogy or your teaching methodology will be effective or not effective. So the age of the learners would matter. So focus on form, for instance, if we are talking about that, it's very difficult for the learners of younger ages to pay attention to forms. We need to keep in mind their interests and their level and their age. Proficiency level of the learners would make a difference. Different types of learners, different learning styles. So if the learners, for instance, prefer rote learning, for instance, and so it will take them some time to come to actually make an attempt to understand the form of the language and to link it with the meaning that they want to express. You will be surprised that there are definitely several children, and I had the experience of some children myself, who actually read quite fluently from an English text. They would read it very fast, and if you ask them what their meaning is, they would not have a clue. So this is reading without understanding the meaning. And if you would like to be reminded, it is almost like how most of us read Quran. You read the Arabic, you can be fluent in reading the Arabic, but you make no attempt to understand what the meaning of that Arabic is. So the only way, even now for us most of the times, for a lot of population, is to actually then read the Urdu translation or the English translation. So if a student in our class is reading fluently, that definitely does not mean that he or she is also understanding what she is doing. So these analytical abilities will be different in your classrooms for different learners. Now the challenge is to find a teaching methodology that fits their needs. If you would say there are so many different learners and they might have different analytical abilities, different learning styles or attitudes, then the best thing to do is to vary or to keep on changing your teaching methodology, to keep on sort of like putting in a little bit of innovation in your classrooms. Attitudes of the learners, how much do they want to really learn, how much do they feel they will be able to complete the task of second language. Extremely important. We have talked about it before also. If you would remember, we talked about sense of efficacy. Extremely important. So what we need to do is to keep in mind that these learners are different even from the class that you had last year, or the class that is sitting there in the next section that you are teaching. So understand that diversity. Learning context variables cannot be ignored, and research actually says that if a second language is being taught in a In a foreign context, that is where the language is not really spoken, then implicit instruction that without any directly talking about language might be less helpful. So what we need to do in that case is to use both implicit, like inducing a language in a communicative way, and yet giving them some explicit or clear discussion about the language, a discussion about how the language actually works. So research has shown that communicative language teaching has marginal impact with a structural syllabus. So a syllabus which is basically focused on grammatical items and moving from one to the other. Even if you use a communicative language methodology, it might not work over there. It might not also work when we are using it alongside grammar translation methods. And in the last but not the least, extremely important is the classroom environment, and that environment is built up through relationships. If the students have relationships of trust with their teachers, then the classroom environment will be safe for them to take risks, to remember learning a language or learning anything new, and using it is risk-taking. So that risk-taking will be easier. Peer relationships matter. If you create an environment in which every student appreciates the other, then it will be easier for them to learn the language, because if they worry that they will be laughed at, they will not use the second language. The whole point is, it is the sensitivity to the needs of the learners, and not just tolerating diversity, but accepting diversity, which is needed in any type of learning, and it is also needed even more so in second language acquisition or second language teaching.